When Canon first announced the Canon R5 Mark II and released it, I was really excited about the 240 FPS. But as you guys know, that is only limited to 2K. So when I realized I've been shooting 4K, 120 frames per second for the past 5 years with the original R5, I realized I don't know if I'm going to want to downgrade to 2K even though I'm getting 240 FPS. But in the last week or so, I've been trying it out, and I think it's been pretty good. Check out some of the footage I got. So when it comes to the actual quality of the 2K in the R5 Mark II in 240 frames per second, I realized that's actually not too bad, especially if you don't crop in. If you're using it for Instagram or YouTube or social media, it's pretty usable. As soon as you start to crop in, you start to notice a lot of sharpness and detail loss, which is really important to me, especially as a wildlife photographer. There are a few situations where 240 FPS is really useful, even if you only have it in 1080p or 2K, or if you have it in 4K. If you do have access to 240 frames per second, you're gonna want to use it on subjects that are moving fast, like wildlife that's flying really quickly, like puffins, or maybe a flag in the wind, or something where the movement of the water is really important to you and you want to slow it down and make a little detailed shot or something like that. What you don't want to use the 240 frames per second in are situations where the animal isn't moving. For example, like a bald eagle just sitting in a tree without any like rain or snow. If it's raining or snowing, that does add a lot of movement to your shot and makes 240 pretty viable. If it's just a sunny day and an animal's sitting on a tree or perched up somewhere and there's nothing moving really, well, obviously you're not going to want to shoot with 2K. One of the mistakes I made over the past week was I was in Sitka, Alaska, and I wanted to really shoot with 4K for the image quality, but the boat was moving really bad. Like, it was just rocking, and like when I was trying to shoot, like my lens was like this, and I thought to myself, I'm still gonna stick with 4K. But looking back, I wish I shot in 2K 240 frames per second, because all those shaky movements would have slowed down that footage just a little bit more and made it a little bit more usable. You can capture a couple more seconds of usable footage in between your shots, where the 120 frames per second was still a little bit too rocky, and I just didn't even bother taking video anymore because that boat was moving so bad. But I did capture some bubble net feeding, which was pretty nice. Now, when we look at the actual settings of your Canon R5 Mark II, if you want to use the 240 frames per second, here's what I recommend. Your shutter speed has to be set to 1/500th of a second if you want the smoothest looking footage with the most realistic motion blur. You really want to adapt the 180-degree shutter roll. Now, I have broken that quite a bit. I have shot at like 250th shutter speed or 2000th if it's really bright out. I do break that sometimes, especially with this lens. I don't have ND filters just yet, so I'm definitely not taking my own advice a lot. But if you want the smoothest looking footage, you're gonna want to shoot at 1/500 shutter speed. And let's just dive into my actual settings here. So we got set for 2KD 240 frames per second. Now there is 2K fine, but I don't know if that works with the 240 frames per second. So we got it set for 2KD 240 frames per second, and there's only one format, and that's long GOP. So get that set. High frame rate, we're gonna disable it. I like to now shoot with normal speed, so that includes audio, and you'll have to slow it down in post-production. But I think it's a big advantage when you could do that, because you're getting the audio. So if there's a cool like whale sound or a bear sound or whatever you're shooting, if it has some cool sounds to it, you get to capture that, and you have the full control in post. If your timeline is 24 frames per second, well, that's 10 times slow motion. And if your timeline is 30 frames per second, it's 8 times slow motion. So you can get a little bit more slow motion if you do shoot in a 24 frames per second timeline. And that also goes the same for the 4K 120 frames per second. If you shoot at 4K 120 in a 24 frames per second timeline, you're gonna get 5 times slow motion. And if you shoot in a 30 frame per second timeline, you're gonna get 4 times slow motion. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. Came down to the harbor today. I was hoping to see some like eagles flying by, capture some more slow motion, but there's really not much going on. I say that and just got a pretty cool slow motion shot of a duck. He is taking off. There's a boat coming at him and he was moving out of the way, so that was pretty cool. So yeah, basically to sum up this video, 240 frames per second is a pretty viable option, especially if you shoot fast moving subjects. For me, wildlife, some wildlife is pretty slow and boring. Some works pretty good for 240 frames per second. If you're moving fast and you need your footage to be as stable as possible, well, 240 frames per second is the best way to slow down your footage and get the most stable looking footage, even if your camera's shaking quite a bit. So if you own the Canon R5 Mark II, I'm curious to know, are you shooting with the 240 frames per second? Is it something that you like, or do you wish they'd kind of update it and give you 4K option? I do wish you had a 4K option, but yeah, it's a pretty cool feature. I would make it my primary frames per second if I had a 4K option, but I don't, and 4K 120 is still going to be my primary wildlife videography frame rate. So I do like that. I'm a big fan of it, but that's just my thoughts on 240 frames per second, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys want to get the R5 Mark II for the 240 frames per second, did the footage do justice for you? And let me know what you think of that ermine. That ermine was pretty cool. I mentioned earlier in this video I went to Sitka. If you want to see what that footage looked like, check out this video right here. That's all I have. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Subscribe to the channel.